So, we've got quite a few topics to discuss today. Ron DeSantis dropped the fuck out. I thought he was gonna stay in it till New Hampshire, but apparently it wasn't meant to be. And so, we are gonna watch his little, campaign suspension video before we move on to the rest of what I consider the more important topics. I'm really only highlighting this because, DeSantis at a certain moment was the chosen one, by the anti-Trump establishment. But nope, that dreaded old crow, Nikki Haley, she done trounced those hopes for him. So without further ado, let's listen to Ron DeSantis's official loser speech.
The warmth of being home is a reminder why I've... Greetings from Florida. The warmth of being home is a reminder why I've chosen public service. From joining the United States Navy and serving in Iraq, to representing the people in the U.S. Congress, and now serving as governor of Florida. And it reminds me why I decided to run for president, to fight for those who have been forgotten in this country. This is America's time for choosing. We can choose to allow a border invasion, or we can choose to stop it. We can choose reckless borrowing and spending, or we can choose to limit government and lower inflation. We can choose political indoctrination, or we can choose classical education. These choices are symptoms of the underlying struggle to ensure that constitutional government can endure and that Western civilization can survive. And we launched this campaign to bring accountability to government, regain sovereignty at our border, and restore sanity to our society. We cannot succeed as a country if we allow our nation to be invaded, our currency to be debased, our cities to crumble, and our kids to be indoctrinated. The DC elites who facilitated this mess do not care about you, and they do not work for you. They work
and neither do you.
For themselves. They seek to accumulate power at your expense to pursue an agenda that is harmful to the American people. Citizens do not serve politicians. It is the duty of politicians to serve you. Talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words. Reversing the decline of this nation requires leadership that delivers big results for the people we are elected to serve. I have a record of leading with conviction, championing an agenda marked by bold colors, delivering on my promises, and defeating the people who are responsible for our nation's decline.
You couldn't even defeat Mickey Mouse.
That is the type of leadership we need for all of America. Now, over the past many months, Casey and I have traveled across the country to deliver a message of hope that decline is a choice and that we can, in fact, succeed again as a nation. Nobody worked harder, and we left it all out on the field. Now, following our second place finish in Iowa, we've prayed and deliberated on the way forward. If there was anything I could do to produce a favorable outcome, more campaign stops, more interviews, I would do it. But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of my promises, and I will not stop now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get
another chance. He is, I hate to interrupt him because this is his moment of, what do you call it? This is his moment of downfall. This is his parting words, at least at a presidential level, I guess for now. He'll probably run in the next, God forbid, the next season, but we'll see how this plays between Haley and Trump in New Hampshire. It is. I was thinking DeSantis was still in the running. I mean, he's polling significantly below Haley in New Hampshire, but I would think, I would personally think that New Hampshire is where he should have gone to, because that's, I always think that in these federal level elections around the world, always go for the second states caucus. So you'll still be in some sort of news cycle for the for the at the first one, even if you don't get second place, maybe third place. DeSantis, I know for a fact, would have been a guaranteed third place, like Haley ended up being in Iowa, and he should have spent his time visiting New Hampshire, because Haley is the one with all the political connections for the most part. Now she can get away with having a bitch voice because she's a woman, but Ron DeSantis not so much, not so much. And to be the president of the United States, at least in accordance with the culture of the country, well, not the country, but the Republican part of the country, you gotta be a rock star. Like you gotta be able to fill stadiums, especially in a state like Iowa compared to New Hampshire. Um, that's just let that be a parting lesson of the DeSantis campaign. Let's continue. I am sorry for the interruption. It's hard to listen to him talk without giving my own commentary.
It's stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents. The days of putting Americans last, of kowtowing to large corporations, of caving to woke ideology are over. I thank all of our passionate supporters who have stood by us through it all. That we had people volunteer to come to Iowa in the middle of a blizzard to knock on doors and make phone calls touched us dearly. No candidate had more thrown at him, but no candidate had so many committed volunteers and staff. Finally, I want to thank my wife, Casey, and our kids, Madison, Mason, and Mamie. Casey's gone far above and beyond in her support for our campaign and for our cause. She's not only a great wife and mother, she's a great American who cares deeply about the future of the country that our kids will inherit. Our kids have seen and done a lot on the trail, from playing on the famed Field of Dreams baseball site in Iowa to making their first snowman in New Hampshire. They are one of the reasons we fight so hard for what we believe in. Winston Churchill once remarked that success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. While this campaign has ended, the mission continues. Down here in Florida, we will continue to show the country how to lead. Thank you, and God bless.
What a fucking nerd. What a fucking nerd. It's like I can't say too much better about Nikki Haley, but you know what? I'll say it. She's not a fucking nerd. Like DeSantis sounds like. No, it's not. Do I consider nerd to be the most condemning insult? No, but to be the fucking president, and I think I would blame Obama for this overall. It's no longer. It might have been. It was for a very long time, actually. a position for academics, but no longer. It's a position for rock stars. Okay, and I even hate calling Obama a rock star, but fills stadiums, has a personality no matter the drastic consequences of their actions, whether it be Obama upstarting the slave trade in Yemen, not Yemen, Libya, not Yemen, Libya. Upstarting the slave trade in, Libya. That Gaddafi had a stranglehold. However, immoral you might have considered him by Western standards. He had a stranglehold in repressing the slave trade in Libya. And, Trump did a shitload of things. Like DeSantis said, he appointed Anthony Fauci. And I mean, I guess at the time it might have made sense to him. You see, Fauci, really claimed his way in this world by working for Ronald Reagan. And, according to a lot of gay rights activists at the time, genocided America's gay population with his antics. And now what Fauci did was he promoted that one. Previously, he promoted that one AIDS drug. I forget what it's called. That was very lethal, and as well as the jab. And so you just these goddamn. Fauci is a Jesuit, and he's also a deep affiliate with the government of Israel. And so it's just amazing how the Israelis went from, in 1948, occupying the Palestinian region. They now occupy the American region. They control everything in this country, no matter the moral cost. So, on that note, today we're delving into a series of events that transpired in Washington, D.C. yesterday. A massive gathering of over 400,000 people took to the streets, fervently demanding an imminent ceasefire in Gaza, coinciding with the conflict's 100th day. The protesters passionately called on elected officials, including President Joe Biden, urging them to align with the majority of Americans and to end unconditional support for Israel. The situation took a dramatic turn when demonstrators attacked a security fence outside the White House post-protest. President Donald Trump, via Truth Social, voiced a concern about what he perceived as anti-Israel protesters invading the White House. Media scrutiny heightened as journalists questioned the Biden administration over National Security spokesman John Kirby's accusations against a Huffington Post reporter. This journalist claimed the White House used tactics to undermine coverage of the Gaza war, sparking debates on anti-Palestinian censorship within the United States. A lawsuit against Evanston alleged the firing of a racial equity leader for supporting Palestinians in Gaza, prompting a discussion on the balance between free speech and government employment. I must advocate at this point for eliminating redundant government positions to protect our sacred free speech rights. This exploration extends to the firing of a diversity, equity, and inclusion official for making pro-Palestinian statements. And while I have my problems with DEI, I feel this firing was discrimination. You know, his statement argued against job termination for expressing views like supporting a ceasefire or condemning bombings in Gaza. This touches on cases like the imprisonment of a university professor in Israel for expressing concerns about the Gaza death toll and the reported firing of an Australian Lebanese host due to pressure from pro-Zionist lobbyists. A critical examination of the United States' ties with Israel and Saudi Arabia is presented here, citing a story that triggered a strong reaction from the Biden administration. The exploration concludes by questioning potential double standards in the treatment of protesters in DC compared to the January 6th protests, emphasizing the need for fair comparisons and scrutiny of charges. In essence, this paints a very nuanced picture of events, censorship, and political sensitivities surrounding this conflict domestically and abroad, encouraging us to critically assess the complexities and potential discrepancies in various scenarios. Now, let's dive into the ongoing World Economic Forum WEF annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. Last year, the spotlight on disinformation as a key problem for global elites to address. This year, the World Economic Forum has elevated the issue further, releasing a report that what happened to my computer screen? Okay, my computer screen's back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I don't know if the stream disinterrupted, but my computer screen went out for some reason. Okay, so as I was saying, this year the WEF has elevated the issue of quote unquote disinformation further, releasing a report that places misinformation and disinformation at the top of short-term risks facing the world, surpassing concerns like interstate armed conflict, climate change, and lack of economic opportunity, as well as societal polarization. Closely linked to misinformation and disinformation, secured the third spot. One of the initial events at this year's meeting was a panel discussion titled, quote unquote, Liberating the Science. The Science. Focusing largely on disinformation in the context of the climate change agenda. Notably, comments made by two panelists, Naomi Arquez, a historian of science at Harvard, and Luciana Bacro, a Swiss scientist, gained attention. Both expressed objections to the increased toxicity of the online space since Elon Musk took over. Now, while I might agree that there's toxicity on Twitter, there's always been toxicity on Twitter. It's just now Elon Musk went to Israel and he's censoring anti-Zionist speech because he needs to gain back his advertisers. This Vakuro criticized Elon Musk's policy on X, stating that the owner's approach is problematic. She highlighted the platform's transformation into a toxic place, leading her to conclude that it's not worthwhile to spend time there. And now, currently I don't spend as much time on Twitter/X either. I was willing to embrace Musk, but then he started doing this anti-Zionist crackdown. And you know what? I cannot abide by paying him for a stupid digital check mark anymore. The fact that I ever did that, I question my own sovereignty of mind. But anyway, that discussion raised by Baracco questions about freedom of expression under Musk's leadership. While short video clips from the session went viral, a deeper exploration of the full discussion revealed insights. Participants often described science as a quasi-religious doctrine. Well, I wouldn't say science per se, but I would say the science trademark symbol. Trust the science. No. Science isn't about trust. It's never been about trust. As a faithful person, I'm full of trust. In fact, I feel sometimes I'm trusting to my own detriment. But, it feels easier on the heart to be trusting, And unfortunately, that's how I've, been conditioned. But, actual science is, it's not about trust. It's about evidence. It's about proving things. It's not about faith, trust, and pixie dust. I love pixie dust. I love faith. I love trust. But they further expressed quote unquote concerns about declining trust. Again, the word trust. Declining trust in scientific institutions. I mean, it just depends on the institution. If it's an institution that's sponsored by the WEF Zionist cartel, global cartel, then I'm sorry, I don't fucking trust it. I would never, why would I trust something so malign? But anyway, these people emphasized, and I hate to side with Musk on this. I really do. Because I fucking hate Elon Musk. He's been acting like an authoritarian against anti-Zionist speech, and this isn't about anti-Zionist speech, though. This is about the ability to be able to question and reject this cartel's dogma. But these people, they quote unquote emphasized the need for scientists to become better communicators of scientific truth. Carlos Anonzo, a researcher at the University of Sao Paulo, expressed frustration about quote-unquote populist backlash against expertise, questioning why populism is increasing globally. Although the panelists failed to provide convincing explanations for the rise of populism and quote-unquote anti-the science sentiment, they cited reasons like the ease of obtaining quote-unquote misinformation, the ease of quote-unquote obtaining misinformation. I'd like to obtain all sorts of information personally. I'd like to obtain information, misinformation, and disinformation. I'd like to have the right to access banned documentation. Especially, sure, it's like, I love it when, journalists publish government secrets. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about freedom of access. And so these people, overall are arguing against freedom of access to information. And I don't think that's a good look. So yes, the quote unquote ease of obtaining misinformation, technological complexities, and the rapid spread of news. Good. I'm glad news spreads rapidly. What? This just screams cover up advocacy all the way. The discussion lacked acknowledgement of policy mistakes made during the pandemic, leading to skepticism among the public. These panelists noted a deliberate attempt to, quote unquote, inflame public distrust in quote unquote experts over the last 2 decades. Still, they failed to address the lived experience of skeptics during the COVID-19 84 pandemic. Criticism was directed at the anti-misinformation crowd, which actively sought to suppress dissenting voices and control the narrative around pandemic policies. The panelists asserted that the science is not democratic, stating that there is no one truth in the end. However, the tension arises when scientists who don't vote influence democratic decision-making processes. This highlighted the need for a nuanced understanding of the relationship between science, policy, and public perception, emphasizing the importance of acknowledging mistakes and engaging in open dialogue rather than suppressing dissent. So, have we not learned anything from the COVID-19 84 era? Reports highlight, these recent reports highlight concerning developments in Chinese laboratories, suggesting a disquieting trend. According to the Daily Mail, Chinese scientists have purportedly engineered a mutant coronavirus strain with a chilling characteristic. It targets the brain and boasts a 100% kill rate in mice. To make matters worse, there's a recognized risk of this strain spilling over to humans. This virus is a modified version originating from pangolins, and it overwent testing on 2 mice expressing a protein found in humans. The purpose was to assess the potential impact on people. Shockingly, all mice infected with this modified virus succumbed within a very narrow time frame, between 7 and 8 days after infection. Disturbing symptoms manifested, including the mycoses eyes turning completely white, rapid weight loss, and overwhelming fatigue. These diabolical researchers discovered a significant viral load not only in the mice's brain, but also in their lungs, noses, eyes, and windpipes. The implications are deeply troubling, raising the specter of a potential new crisis. As we navigate these developments, the critical question remains: have we truly absorbed the lessons of the past? Or are we once again on the precipice of a grave global health crisis? The stakes of this are high, in my view, and our ability to respond swiftly and effectively will undoubtedly shape the trajectory of our futures. Amidst the ongoing Houthi blockade against Western shipping in the Red Sea, and as Western forces escalate their involvement under the banner of defense of international commerce, it's worth pondering the root causes. In my opinion, the blockade's resolution hinges on a significant shift: the cessation of pouring vast resources into what I perceive as Zionist warmongering. In just the last week, the Biden administration, in collaboration with European allies, initiated a series of missile strikes targeting locations in Yemen. The stated aim was to bring about a quote unquote resolution to the escalating situation. However, this Monday, rebels responded by launching an anti ship ballistic missile at the Jaltir Eagle, a container vessel owned and operated by the United States. But there was no reported injuries and minimal damage. That's fortunate. But who put them in that? Who put those people in that situation of um, of threat? Who put those people under threat? Genocide Joe. Absolutely. So what caught my attention most recently was President Biden seemingly admitting that his missile strikes were falling short of their intended impact. Uh, in my view, he was just screaming the quiet part out loud, and that everything wasn't working as expected. But despite this damning admission, he then, right after, expressed the intent to persist with these failure strikes. This raises critical questions about the effectiveness of military intervention and the broader geopolitical considerations at play. Are these actions truly advancing the cause of resolving the conflict, or are they part of a larger, more complex puzzle? The situation in Yemen and the Red Sea demands a closer examination, not just of the events on the surface, but of the underlying dynamics shaping the course of these geopolitical maneuvers. The constitutional implications of Genocide Joe's actions are certainly worth examining. The argument goes that engaging in military actions without congressional approval is unconstitutional. And in this case, the bombing campaign initiated by Genocide Joe, supposedly to defend a shipping route, raises questions about the legality of such actions when they don't directly involve U.S. military vessels. So what makes this situation even more attention demanding is the nature of the blockade and its targets. It's not a defense of U.S. military vessels, but rather a defense of a shipping route that predominantly involves non-U.S. military ships. The implication here is that the blockade was primarily directed at Israel, with ships allowed to pass as long as they weren't bound for Israel. This essentially translates to a blockade of Israel, not necessarily the shipping route, okay? This prompts my immediate point around the humanitarian aspect. The Yemeni perspective, having suffered a genocide of their own initiated by Saudi Arabia, the servants of the Zionist ethno-state at Saudi Arabia, and their solidarity, the Yemeni solidarity with Palestine, now that they're undergoing their own similar genocide. It's like, at a certain point, the Yemeni genocide was so compelling to Congress that a resolution to condemn Saudi Arabia's actions in Yemen passed the House, passed the Senate, and only failed when Trump vetoed it. So make of that what you will on election day, because I'm voting for Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. So a notable the Yemeni perspective and their solidarity with Palestine bring comparisons to other instances of humanitarian blockades. A notable example is the Turkish ship that sought to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza, only to be bombed by Israel in the process, resulting in the death of an American. Interestingly, there was no consideration or discourse around the idea that the United States resorting to bombing Israel in defense due to this American death, and especially not to retaliate to the bombing of the USS Liberty, a U.S. military ship, not a Turkish ship, a U.S. military ship. Israel can do absolutely anything. They're just allowed to do anything, especially, take a bite out of good old Uncle Sam. Okay. The constitutional argument gains strength as it intersects with questions of international law, the use of military force, and the specific circumstances surrounding this bombing campaign. As we navigate these complexities, it's essential to scrutinize the legal and constitutional frameworks that guide such actions and consider the broader geopolitical implications at play. Today, we've delved into critical topics with constitutional, geopolitical, and ethical implications. Whether examining the handling of a mutant coronavirus strain in Chinese laboratories or navigating the complexities of science communication, or scrutinizing military actions in response to global conflicts, the underlying themes revolve around accountability, legality, and the broader impact on international relations. The narrative underscore the need. The narratives that I've displayed here anyway underscores the need, the imminent need for thoughtful consideration of constitutional principles, legal frameworks, and ethical standards in addressing these challenges. From the potential risks of experimental viruses to the intricacies of global power dynamics, this really, heightens my aim to shed light on multifaceted issues as we continue on into this year. I'm encouraged into a nuanced understanding of the factors at play, so that once I get past my nuance, I can get back into the subjective and apply my influence in the best way that I know how. As we navigate these intricate landscapes, launching into the beginning of what seems it's going to be a very, very long year, it becomes apparent that informed discourse, freedom of access, as I highlighted earlier, and critical analysis are essential. I aspire to seek to contribute to a broader conversation about the implications of actions on both a national and global scale. I'm prompted to a deeper reflection on the principles that shape our reactions, our responses to evolving challenges. Thank you for watching. I'll probably be doing another Vice City Thon later in the day, so stay tuned for that. I bid thee adieu.
Goodbye.